This film has been prepared by the Norwegian Organisation for Asylum Seekers, NOAS. NOAS is a non-governmental human rights organisation that provides information and legal assistance for asylum seekers. The film contains important information for asylum seekers applying for protection in Norway. What happens when you apply for protection? You register as an asylum seeker with the police. The police will take your picture and fingerprints. They will ask you about your identity and how you got to Norway. If you have identity papers with you, you will have to present these during registration. Not everyone who applies for protection in Norway has their application processed in Norway. The Dublin Agreement is a collaboration between European countries, which ensures that asylum seekers only have their application processed in one of the countries covered by the agreement. Your application could be processed in another country covered by the Dublin Agreement if, in the country in question, your fingerprints have been registered. You have applied for asylum. You have a visa or residence permit. You have close family. It normally takes 2 to 6 months for the Norwegian authorities to investigate and decide whether you should be transferred to another country. If you require further information, you can obtain a separate brochure on the Dublin Agreement. Who will process your asylum application in Norway? The Norwegian Directorate of Immigration, UDI, is part of the Norwegian government. UDI will ask you why you are applying for protection. The UDI assesses all asylum applications carefully and treats each application on its own merits. After registration, you will be driven to a reception centre. You will remain here for a few days before being moved to another temporary or normal reception centre. You will be given more information on your obligations and rights by the staff at the centre. During your first few days at the reception centre, you will be tested for tuberculosis. This is compulsory for everyone. If you have a serious health problem that requires urgent treatment, you should inform the health centre of this. During your first days at the reception centre, you will receive information from NOAS. NOAS's role at the reception centre is to provide information and guidance for asylum seekers. You will get to talk with a NOAS staff member. The purpose of the talk is to prepare you for the interview with the UDI. It is important that you use the talk to ask any questions you may have on applying for protection. The talk will be held in a language you will understand well. Most of you will be interviewed by the UDI. The asylum interview is the most important opportunity to explain why you are applying for protection. The asylum interview normally lasts several hours. Explain concretely and in detail your experiences and what you would be afraid of if you had to return to your homeland. An interpreter will be present during the interview. The interpreter has the duty of confidentiality and is neutral. If you have any problems understanding what is being said, you should immediately advise the interviewer. Give a thorough and detailed account of why you had to leave your homeland and what you fear if you have to return. Focus on your own experiences and what will happen to you if you have to return. Be as specific as possible. If you have brought children under the age of 18, explain the situation and what they have experienced. Ask the interviewer for an explanation if there is something you do not understand. If you have documents relevant to your asylum application, you should bring them to the interview. Tell the truth. If you provide false information, it may lead to your application being rejected. At the end of the asylum interview, you sign a report on what has been said during the interview. The interpreter will read this out to you. If you wish to change anything in the report, you must mention this before you sign. You move to a normal reception centre where you will live while you are waiting for a reply from the UDI. Accommodation at the reception centre is free. If you wish, you can live privately while you are waiting for a response from the UDI, but then you will not receive any financial support. If you move, you must report this to the reception centre, which will register your new address. It is important that your address is registered, as this will allow the UDI's response to reach you. You may have the right to work while you are seeking asylum. You can receive a work permit while you are waiting for your asylum application to be processed. If you can document your identity and you are not being processed under the Dublin Agreement. The work permit is valid for up to 6 months, but can be renewed. You have the right to receive medical treatment you need while you are waiting for your asylum application to be processed. Medical treatment for children under 12 years of age is free. Everyone in Norway must usually make a contribution to their medical treatment. If you need help from a psychologist, you can apply to the UDI to pay your expenses. Contact the reception centre staff for further information. If you have serious health problems, you should inform the UDI. Have you brought any children under 18 years of age with you? The child's situation is important in assessing the position of the asylum seeker. The UDI wishes to find out both whether the child has his or her own grounds for claiming asylum and how the child views his or her life situation. It is important that you tell the UDI about this during the asylum interview. The UDI interviews children over the age of 7. It is important that the child has a chance to explain, in his or her own words, what he or she has experienced. Sometimes, children experience problems more intensely than adults. The UDI never interviews children unless the children themselves want to be interviewed. Women can be subject to other forms of persecution than men. These can be difficult to talk about, perhaps in particular to men. If you wish, you can talk with a female member of staff at NOAS. If you wish to do this, advise NOAS as soon as possible after having watched this information film. You can also request a female interviewer and female interpreter for your interview with UDI. You can advise this during the talks with NOAS. You have an obligation to help clarify your identity. It is important that the Norwegian authorities know who you are. It is therefore important that you supply documents that can confirm your identity. If you are being persecuted by the authorities in your homeland, the Norwegian authorities will not require you to contact them to obtain identity documents. If the Norwegian authorities have doubts about your identity, you will risk not being believed, reducing the chance of being granted residence, losing rights you would otherwise have been granted, being granted a restricted residence permit. You have a duty to provide accurate information. As an asylum seeker, you must explain why you are applying for protection. Therefore, you must do your best to collaborate and present the necessary documentation. Regardless of what you may have heard before you applied for protection, it is important that you explain to the Norwegian authorities the correct background for your asylum application. It is a criminal offence to give inaccurate information. It could also result in expulsion. If you receive new information that is important for your asylum application after the asylum interview, you should inform the UDI immediately. Explain why you did not mention this information earlier. The centre's staff can explain to you how to do this. The UDI can take anything from a few weeks to more than a year to process your asylum application. If it takes a long time, this could be because the UDI has to investigate whether the information you have given is correct. Who has the right to protection? You have the right to protection, for example asylum, if you are at risk of being killed, tortured, or exposed to other serious violation if you return to your homeland. If the authorities in your homeland can protect you, or if there are safe areas for you in your homeland, you will normally not have the right to protection in Norway. The people who are entitled to protection are established in international agreements that Norway is obliged to follow. Who can be granted residence on humanitarian grounds? If you do not have the right to claim protection, the authorities will assess whether you meet the terms for being granted residence on strong humanitarian grounds or due to particular affiliation with Norway. This is known as eligibility for residence on humanitarian grounds. You must generally have a passport to be granted this type of residence. If you have not presented a passport to the authorities, this could result in your application being rejected, or you being granted a restricted residence permit that does not allow permanent residence or your family to immigrate with you. If you commit a criminal act, your asylum application will be processed extremely rapidly, meaning you could quickly be ordered to leave Norway. If you do something illegal, you could also be expelled from Norway, which means you will not be able to enter Norway or most other European countries at a later date. If you receive a residence permit, you will receive an offer to be housed in a local municipality. You will receive more information at the reception centre. If your application is rejected, you have the right to appeal. You will receive a certain number of hours of legal advice, normally 5 hours, to help you with your appeal. You must appeal within 3 weeks. You can normally remain in Norway while your appeal is being processed, but not if the UDI believes that your application is clearly groundless. The Norwegian Immigration Appeals Board. UNE will assess your appeal. The UNE can summon you to a meeting or ask you to present extra information. If you receive a rejection, you are obliged to return to your homeland. You must then return home within the deadline established by the police, normally 2 weeks. If you receive a final rejection, for example, if the UNE upholds the UDI's rejection of protection, you can either choose to return voluntarily with the International Organization for Migration, IOM, or be escorted out of the country by the police. Forced return. The Norwegian authorities will arrange for you to return to your homeland voluntarily. Voluntary return means that you collaborate on your journey home by applying for acceptance under the return program in Norway, called the Voluntary Assisted Return Program, VARP. The VARP is a collaboration between the UDI and IOM, who arrange your journey home. When you return voluntarily, the Norwegian government pays for your return. Anyone who does not have a residence permit in Norway can apply for voluntary return. You can obtain more information on voluntary return and help completing your application form from your reception centre, the UDI's regional office, or the IOM. You can withdraw your asylum application at any time. It could then be possible for you to apply to the IOM for help travelling home. If after final rejection you do not return home voluntarily, you will be escorted out of the country by the police once your deadline has passed. You have to pay for your escorted return yourself. If you are unable to pay for the flight ticket, the government will pay for this, but you will be obliged to repay the costs. If you do not pay for your escorted return, you could be denied a visa and entry into Norway and other European countries at a later date. The police, UDI, UNE, interpreter, lawyer, health personnel, and NOAS have a duty to maintain confidentiality. This means that they cannot give information on your asylum application to the authorities in your homeland. They can also not report what you have said to people who are not working on your asylum application. Breaking the duty of confidentiality is a criminal offence. You therefore do not need to be afraid of explaining in detail why you need protection.